or payments made to employees like payroll support.
Thank you so much. So Jones, if you could release the first question in queue, we're ready to take those questions now. Good morning, and who's on the line? I hear some background noise. We're ready for your question. All right, guys.
Hello. Hello.
Yes.
Okay. Tanya Leak.
Hi. Yes. I looked at the application yesterday, and as a sole proprietor / general contractor, I get both 1099s, and there are some organizations that have me on call as an employee, as a on-call employee. So I do get W-2s from them. So there's actually probably about an even number. So I'm trying to figure out how I do the calculation around the actual amount. And then the second question is actually around whether or not the documents you talked about go with the application, because I didn't see anything that allows you to attach it.
Irene, do you want to take that?
Sure. So let me start with the latter part, right? And I may need your help on the first part, Taya. With the latter part, some organizations or some lenders are requiring you to upload the documentation along with the application. Others are just asking you for the basic information in the application, and then they will have a representative follow up with you and then ask you to provide that documentation later on in the process. Now back to your first part, I believe you said you indicated that you received 1099s, but you were also an on-call employee, right? Did I hear that right? I think I did. Now, I've not seen that situation, so there's where I'm gonna need some help, Taya. So if you receive 1099s, yes, the 1099 income should be included if you're calling yourself a sole proprietor or independent contractor. Now, the fact that someone has you as an on-call employee, I'll be honest, I'm not exactly sure how that would be considered. Taya, do you have any anything to add or any perspective on that?
Sure, I think we would just do a strict application of the rules and the guidelines. And so the Payroll Protection Program, and by the way, I do want to just create a little footnote that there are other avenues to pursue. There is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, there's the Paycheck Protection Program, there's non-traditional financing, there's unemployment insurance. The CARES Act goes over a slew or plethora of avenues that need to be considered, and Irene and other people like my colleagues in the accounting industry are perfect resources for you to go to them to seek guidance and assistance on the many avenues that the CARES Act addresses. But back to the issue. So remember now, the Payroll Protection Plan is available to cover you for certain expenses, including payroll costs, that are incurred over a set period of time to the extent that this business activity had already begun prior to February 15th, 2020. Now, independent contractors, as well as businesses, are afforded the opportunity to apply for the protection plan to the extent that they have earnings in 2019 that are demonstrated, as Irene indicated, on their 1040 Schedule C. So you would apply, the questioner, for assistance as an independent contractor. Employees are not offered any payroll protection plan. However, of course, there are other avenues that you could pursue, as I mentioned earlier.
Thank you, Jones. Can we go to the next question, please?
So the next question will be coming from Yolanda Ezel.
Hi, this is Yolanda. Hello?
Yes,
Yeah,
Yolanda,
we can
go
hear
on.
Okay, perfect. I wanted to know if you received the funds, would this be included as income for 2020? And for employees, if there are employees in a small business, like I pay my assistant, via Zelle on Wells Fargo, excuse me, will bank statements be enough to show that that's an employee if you have like years of payments?
Irene, do you want to, I don't want to just engage in a monologue here, but I should say this. The amount of the loan that's forgiven will constitute income for tax purposes. I'll start off there. I think that addresses part of your question.
Okay.
Right, so the second part, I think, related to will your bank statement suffice? I did read something where if you don't have, you're not paying them through traditional payroll register or something like that, or payroll service, you could present bank statements. So it's up to the lender on what they'll accept. But if you don't have anything else, then I would present those.
Yeah, I want to jump in though and say this. It's more of a practical, it's not really legal, but I'm sure everybody understands the environment that we're in. So for example, it's pretty clearly disseminated that those with existing or established banking relationships have an edge, which is one of the reasons why in this new round, the Democrats primarily, with support of course from Republicans, carved out a significant portion that would be allocated towards community banks and let's call them non-institutional lenders, because they were finding a weakness in those monies being directed to places like Shake Shack and other large businesses with established banking relationships, Harvard and Stanford most recently. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because you want to be as accurate and complete as possible as you apply for these loans because of the demand and the competition for them. I'm not suggesting that what you have is insufficient, but I am suggesting that to the extent that you can provide traditional documentation like a 941, you are probably in a better position, because if the bank has to come back and assist you and help you, it may put you back in queue.
So much for your question. Dee Jones, are we ready for the next question this morning?
Yes, the next question is coming from Juanita Powell Williams.
Good morning, Ms. Williams. You are now open for your question. As we get her ready, I'm just going to go on and take the next question. Sometimes it's a little lag, guys. There's a question that says, this will be my first year doing a 1099 with my business. I just retired from corporate America in 2019. So how do or can I apply for PPP for my business? I'm the only employee as I have a transportation business. I want to make sure I'm not overstepping my right. Who wants to start with that one?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Could you repeat it again?
Sure. This will be my first year doing a 1099 with my business. I just retired from corporate America in 2019. So how do or can I apply for the PPP for my business? I'm the only employee as I have a transportation business. I want to make sure I'm not overstepping my right.
Yeah, I think it would depend on when your business started, because I think the caller said that they retired in 2019, right? So
Correct.
It would, one, depend on when the business started, but two, you said this is the first time you'll be doing a 1099. And I guess I'm trying to understand if you should have already received the 1099. And so Taya, you may want to kind of jump in here as it relates to the timing of when the business was started, because it's difficult to try to answer the caller's call without really understanding that.
No, that's exactly right. Irene has hit on the gist of the concern and the issue at hand, which is that the program is aimed at businesses that had been established actively operational prior to February 15th of 2020. Remember, the underlying rationale is that a business has to be adversely impacted by the pandemic. And so they've kind of created this line in the sand. So to the extent that, you know, you're dealing with business earnings from a business that started in 2020, you probably are not going to be eligible.
Okay, thank you. Let's see if we have Miss Paul Williams on the line. Ms. Williams, are you on the line this morning? If not, I'm going to read her question. My business account with Bank of America, their PPP application process has a third party, Intralinks, taking the application and documents. I've attempted to upload the documents unsuccessfully. No one answers the helplines at the bank nor at Intralinks numbers that are listed. I was able, however, to upload documents to Square Solutions loan page without any problems. I have a Square account, and I guess this is where the invitation to apply came from, but I'm thoroughly disgusted with Bank of America system in place. I was not able to apply for the first round of funds with them as well. What should I do?
It
Well,
sounds like they already did it. Yeah, I'm not sure what else to say. It sounds like you already did it. If you've applied with the other organization, then at this point, you just have to wait for a response. Say anything different?
just that, you know, the frustration is not on your shoulders alone. When this first happened, many of the banks, institutional banks, really didn't ramp up quickly enough to address the demand. And they wanted to push back on what the government was basically throwing at them on a number of levels. You know, they didn't have promissory note forms. They didn't know about the representations and certifications. So banks were hesitant to jump into the fray, which is one of the reasons why many existing clients got favored or preferred. And I understand the questioner said that she has, or maybe she doesn't, have a relationship with Bank of America, one of the bigger banks. I think that they've gotten better recently. I know Capital One has gotten better, and SBA has a slew or a list of lenders that have been that they list for these purposes. You might want to just check that. I can make it available, and then it can be circulated. But I will say this, you know, just like before, where you really need to act quickly from a practical sense. And if Irene is right, you've applied already, you just sort of sit tight. I know a lot of my clients have gotten notifications from some of the banks that they've applied to. And I would hope that Bank of America also, you know, notifies people to kind of lower the level of frustration.
Thank you so much.
mentioned something important that everybody may not understand. When you go and you apply online, it's not just the standard application that you have to respond to. A lot of these banks are have instituted other things, right? And so as part of the application, many of these banks or lenders are requiring you to sign these promissory notes. And you, as the borrower, has to understand that you need to read that promissory note to understand exactly what you're agreeing to. A lot of them are standard, but if you've never signed a loan agreement with a bank, you need to read it yourself, understand it. If you have legal representation, have them read it, just so you're clear about what you have to be compliant with.
And I'm sorry to jump in on this because this is right in my bailiwick, and I do want to stress this for everybody on the call. So number one, these loans are unsecured. There's no need for collateral. Number two, there is no personal guarantee. Now, just like a personal guarantee, if I sign a note, Kiasian Kaite Amur, I'm personally liable, which is the equivalent of a personal guarantee. So these notes, and by the way, as Irene pointed out and stressed, banks can use their own forms. The SBA has provided a form, if you want to call it that, but the bank form will probably try to heighten their risk, shifting of the risk. So they're going to want you to sign this personally. You should sign it as a representative of your business. Now, I can't address that as a sole proprietor or as an independent contractor, of course, but for those of you that represent churches, nonprofits, businesses, you should be signing this as a representative of your business. There may be some pushback from the bank. This is one of those areas that hasn't been adequately addressed properly, but the guidelines clearly state from Treasury that these loans are unsecured and no personal guarantee is required. And I read that as an attorney to mean I don't have to put up collateral and I don't have to personally be liable, as long as I have a company that I can represent.
Thank you, Taya, and thank you, Irene. We're going to continue with a couple of questions. I see that there are those who have raised their hand. We'll take a question and see if we can get them in queue. This next question is, I'm a new business. I'm a new business.
I can't hear.
I did not give any invoices to companies whom I provided services. Should I create those invoices to show the value of my services with the zero related work for my business? What should I do?
You were going in and out. We couldn't hear.
Your line is going out. Can you repeat the question?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm a new business and I have not made any money since starting last June. I've done volunteer work providing my services. I did not give any invoices to companies whom I provided those services. What should I do? Should I go back and create invoices to show the value of my services with a zero amount due? I have much debt accumulated.
Yeah, my initial reaction to that is, my initial reaction to that is, yeah, I'm not sure you go back for purposes of this. Do you know what I mean? It's just good business practice to make sure that you are invoicing people so you can have evidence of the service rendered, supporting the payment that was made. But that's my initial reaction. I think you should do it because it's good business practice, but going back just to do it for this, yeah. I'm not sure what you gain from that. Taya, do you have another perspective?
Yeah, let's take a granular look at that question because this might be helpful for others. So what you're saying, I think, is that in the tax year 2019, you performed services for which you did not invoice the customer, but
Correct.
the customer did pay you. Therefore, I'm
They
sorry.
said volunteer.
A volunteer. Oh, I see. So no, I think Irene is right. I mean, if you don't have income that you can report on 2019, you don't have 1099s that you received for work done in 2019, it makes no sense for you now to try to recreate, you know, a compensation from a client in 2019 because you didn't claim that as income for the year at issue. So I don't think that's going to work for you.
Thank you, Taya and Irene. D. Jones, I'm coming your way. If you want to ask a question, guys, you can do so by raising the question hand icon. Raise your hand icon on the screen. D, you ready for a question right now?
Yes, I have Aura Mosley.
Miss Mosley, good morning. And what's your question?
My question is, if I'm a small business and I have less than 7 employees, what steps do I need to take? Do I need to go to the bank? Because I went to the bank and asked for assistance and they said I can only come in by appointment.
Yeah,
Irene,
so
you wanna
what
go?
kind of business are you? Are you organized as a
It's a contractor, plumbing.
No, but I mean, are you a sole proprietor or is your business incorporated or?
Yes, it is incorporated.
Okay, so yeah, I'm not, we can't speak to them providing assistance or not, but as a corporation, I think, I'm not sure if you were on the call yesterday, but I think the slides are available. You can go onto the SBA's website to understand what the application process is. And in yesterday's presentation, we indicated that you need to calculate what your average payroll is, right? Which is your annual payroll divided by 12 times 2.5, average payroll divided by 12, plus accumulate your healthcare costs, then accumulate any retirement related costs that you've paid in, and any state and local taxes, and use that as the basis of your annual income, right? And so if you need assistance in understanding what's eligible, you can refer to the presentation yesterday, or you can go to the SBA website to kind of understand what those requirements are. And if you have, I guess, any questions from there, and I'm not sure how this is being done, maybe you can submit them through the NAACP and see if we can get you some assistance that way.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for your question. Jones, you have another one lined up for us?
Yes, Deborah Thompson.
Ms. Thompson, good morning. We're ready for your question.
And after Ms. Thompson, okay.
And then I also have a small business as a sole proprietor with a fictitious name. I applied online through the SBA's portal and submitted, and I've received a number. I haven't received any response or any updates from that. And when I tried to do the other form for the 2.5 times my income, they said, take that form to the bank. So I noticed as time went on, these applications and the process changed. So I called Bank of America, made an appointment. They did come to the phone to me. They told me now they were not going to take my application. They were an intermediary. I needed to go to the treasury.gov portal and apply for the loan. They were not doing anything but verifying that I had a business account with that bank.
Well, Irene, you want to start or?
Yeah, I don't even know where to start. I think what you said was you applied online with the SBA through its portal. So what were you applying for? Was it an EIDL loan?
Because yes, that was the $10,000 loan, or up to $10,000 that would be forgiven if if you qualified at the end of whatever the period is, 8 weeks or something.
Okay, my understanding with that, and Taya, you can jump in here as well, is that you could have gone to a bank for that, right? So I'm not exactly sure how they were processing those $10,000 loans, I guess, through the SBA portal. And I think the next thing you said was that you had taken your application to the bank, and then they told you to go back to the SBA's website.
No,
so I'm not
the Treasury's website.
I'm sorry, the Treasury's website. So when you went to the bank, were you applying for a PPP loan? Because they could have still taken the application, and then if you let's just
everything was over the phone.
Over the phone, yeah. I don't understand why they wouldn't have taken your application for a PPP loan.
I didn't either.
Yeah,
so anyway, that was my experience with that. But one of my clients that I worked with did get $5,000 of the $10,000 grant or loan or whatever it is, already deposited it in her bank. And then I have another friend over in Tampa, and they have received $7,000 through that portal that we were assigned numbers. I just haven't gotten anything in mine yet. So some of it is working. I don't know what the trigger is. They are incorporated. I am a sole proprietor, and I do hear that sometimes that's part of it, but I have 9 employees through the 8A program for Small Business Administration.
So let's unwind that a little bit.
Right.
I'll give you this quick summary. So due to the high demand, this $10,000 advance was made a part of the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. So it's a new feature. But what we're learning is that you really are limited to $1,000 per employee up to $10,000. Ergo, the reason some of your clients are getting $6,000 or $7,000, it's probably pegged to the number of employees that they can demonstrate or evidence. As for you, perhaps one of the reasons could be that you don't have a means to do a direct deposit. I don't know if you...
I do. I have a contract with the federal government, and they deposit my check every month.
Okay, so you should have a bank. You should have given them the checking account number and the routing number. That's really the bridge.
I did.
between the loans getting to you. And so we're going to just assume that the application was done correctly and that the loan either isn't made because they ran out of money or it's coming.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Jones, are we ready for the next question? I see a couple of participants with their hands up.
Next question is from Pat Perkins.
Ms. Perkins, good morning and welcome to the call. How can we help you?
Hi, good morning. First of all, I just want to say thank you so much. This is very informative and I appreciate your efforts and helping us. I wanted to address the concern with the Bank of America. I have had my application received and completed through the Bank of America. It has not been approved and it'll probably get approved where, fingers crossed through this next round. But I just want to say that I did have challenges with the submission of the documents as well, and realized even though the local banks are not really supportive because they don't have the information, but realize that just because they're asking you for certain information, you may have to go above and beyond and add information such as the worksheets that they're indicating. Because once I added the worksheet to what Bank of America is asking for, then my application was completed. And so my bottom line point is that sometimes we have to move forward, add more information than they're maybe even asking for, even though it may guide us against that. But it worked and my application was actually completed. So I just wanted to say that and offer that as some input or some guidance.
Thanks so much. And thank you for being patient. I have a question on the feed here. If a company is still conducting business and hasn't lost more than half of their normal income, would they still be eligible for PPP? Wouldn't it be illegal to get it if you're still generating sales? I'll start with you, Irene.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, it's I think one of the representations is that you do need it and you were affected by COVID-19. So if you don't need it and your business was not affected by COVID-19, I would say then you should not apply, because you do have to make certain representations to that fact. And these are federal forms that are being filed, and you never want to make any misrepresentations on the federal form.
Taylor, would you like to add something there?
I'll say two things. There's a substantive response, and that is, have you been adversely impacted by the pandemic? And I think the questioner said that half of her revenue had vanished. Is that correct?
They had not lost half.
Okay, I don't know how to interpret that other than as I said.
I think it's less than half.
Okay, so there has been an adverse impact because revenue has declined. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and then I'll go, and so I'm not going to tell anybody, a borrower here, that if they have lost revenue and they're questioning whether or not they can retain personnel as a result of the lost revenue, that they shouldn't apply. However, I will stress this last point. It's absolutely critical that you be accurate and honest and make these representations properly. So read everything just like Irene had indicated, and I stress that for so many reasons that I won't get into now, but you come strong and do the best you can as far as these applications are concerned. But I mean, if somebody's going to question you because 20% of your revenue is down and you may have to fire a couple of people, as your attorney, I would go with that, in my opinion.
Thank you for your answer. Jones, are you ready with the next question?
Yes, we have Lisa Smith up next.
Ms. Smith, good morning.
Good morning. How are you today?
Doing well. What's your question?
Wonderful. My question is, it's the one that's actually in the question bar. It's a hypothetical example about the PPP loan. If you get $100,000 in PPP loan and you decide to request $50,000 be forgiven, then 75% of the 50,000 must be spent on payroll. Is that correct? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, so there's a whole lot of confusion up and down the Eastern Seaboard with this PPP forgiveness wording. You are forgiven that which you do not request to turn into a loan. Is that right?
So many double negatives there. I'm having a hard time following
I get
that.
it. So for example, I have the example in the question, the Q&A box. I have the question.
Okay.
If you receive $100,000, that would mean 75,000 must be spent on payroll.
75%.
That's right, which is 75,000 of 100,000, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So if you only spend 70,000 on payroll, is the other 5,000 then automatically converted to a loan over
Yes.
the SBA 30-year idle? Or the
Yes. So right. I mean, so let's just follow the numbers, right? So 75% of the loan to be forgiven
Yes.
for payments made during an 8-week period after you receive the loan,
Yes.
okay, would qualify for the forgiveness. And the other 25% can be used for mortgage interest, utilities, rent. We clear so far?
Yes. So is the 25% forgiven also mortgage, utilities, rent?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Suppose you only spend 71% on payroll.
Okay, so there's no reason to go into those questions because you just follow those numbers, right? 75%, 25% during the 8-week period. Anything that doesn't fall within those parameters will be converted into a loan payable over 2 years with perhaps 6 months or 12 months deferment at a 1% interest rate.
Okay, and that's a final interpretation because I've talked to lawyers and bankers and nobody has the proper answer.
I'm trying not to interpret. I'm just trying to restate black letter guidelines. Now, how someone may be interpreting black letter guidelines, I'm not going to go there.
That's right. That's my stance as well. So very good. Because it's last statement, a number of people have said, if you don't spend 75,000 on payroll, then none of it is able to be forgiven. Is that incorrect?
That's an interesting nuance. I don't want to jump into that, but I would have to say no. And I'd have to go back and check the guidelines because I don't like to just give advice, knee-jerk advice. That's not helping you or me, but let's just remember the way it works is if 25% of the loan is used for non-payroll eligible expenses, it's forgivable.
Correct.
75% has to be used for payroll eligible expenses. So your question to me was, okay, so I didn't use any of it for pay. I'm restating it to make it easy. I didn't use any of the loan for payroll. I used everything for 25%. Does that mean that the 25% is ineligible because I didn't use any of it for payroll? And I'll have to go back and check that nuance, but my instinctive or visceral response is you should be able to at least cover that 25% because you used it for eligible expenses, but you're asking if must the payroll be used in tandem with the 25%, and it's a nuance I haven't really looked at.
Well, that's not exactly my question. My actual question is, if you come short of spending 75%, is the difference then converted to a loan, or are you blown away and you must repay all 75% of it and is no longer forgivable?
It's the same. It's just a restatement of the same question. In other words, your question says, must the 75% be done initially in order to trigger the remaining forgiveness of the 25%? That's what you're asking. So
I'm not worried about the 25%. I'm concerned about being able to present documentation that shows that I have spent 75% on payroll. It may only be 72%.
So may I step in here?
Yes, sir.
Your questions may get to the point that is so specific. If you're awarded, that's a conversation you need to have with your financial institution. What the attorney now is trying to state to you is the black letter law. If the bank has a different interpretation, I think that you need to resolve that with your financial institutions, because going down this path here may cause more confusion for some of our participants today. And that's a very specific question that institution by institution may deviate from the black letter of the law what the attorney now is saying, this is what it's saying. If there's a different interpretation, that's a conversation with the financial institution.
Gotcha. How can I get a response from Taya Moore by email once he researches it?
I don't think a response is necessary via email. It's a conversation you need to have directly with your financial institution if you're an awarded a loan.
Okay, got it. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes.
And thank you for your question. Jones, are you ready for the next question? Maybe not. Maybe he.
No. I'm ready. I was on mute. So the next person is Timothy Alabi.
Mr. Alabi, thank you and welcome this morning, and we're ready for your question.
And if he's not ready, we got Garnet Francis.
Good morning.
Yes.
Okay.
Good morning. Can you hear me, please?
Yes, we can.
Can you hear Timothy?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, good morning. And I want to thank you all for the good work. So I bank with Bank of America, and I'm a sole but one employee as of now. So they indicated I'm qualified for PPP because I'm LLC. So every time I send in my document, they always say document not received or not completed. So they didn't actually indicate what is not completed. So now I'm asking, what kind of document do I need to send as LLC? Actually, I send in my 1099 and the addendum, and also there's another form they asked me to, financial statement. I sent that one in. So every time they still request that the document is not, they can't process it because of the document. So at this point, I don't know what document they are requesting for.
Irene, can you help him?
Yeah, I didn't hear the essence of the question.
I think there's part, he's an LLC. He's been trying to apply with Bank of America. They send him a response by saying the documents are not complete, but will not say which documents are missing. So now his question is, he has sent his form plus the addendum. What else is needing, or what documents are needed, so that he can submit them all?
Thank you.
Yeah, that's difficult to answer without knowing what they're telling you is deficient.
Okay. So that follows this question. Am I supposed to send Schedule C?
So, if you're an independent contractor,
yes,
they likely are asking you for your 2019 Schedule C, whether you filed your tax return or not.
But they didn't indicate that to me. They didn't tell me.
They did not tell you that?
Yes, that I need to send that.
Well, Irene is correct though. Your LLC, are you a sole member LLC?
Yes, I'm sole.
So the LLC is disregarded for tax purposes, and you are deemed to be an individual filing as an independent contractor under your Form 1040 Schedule C. So you follow the rules as an independent contractor, as Irene indicated.
Actually, there are three options. I follow the third option, which is contractor. So on that one, it requires me to send 1099 and also addendum.
That's true. Independent contractors should provide the 1099 to demonstrate the net earnings for 2019 in addition to their 1040 Schedule C. There's nothing inconsistent about that.
Okay.
And it's exactly what Irene said.
Okay, that they didn't request, but right now that I know, I will. Thank you. So another question, please. On the form that was sent to me, it says certification and authorizations. So the second aspect, I want to read it to the lawyer. See, I mean, I didn't check it because I didn't understand it. Maybe it may be applicable to some other group or some other team in this kind of, what we are doing here. It does. Any loan received by the applicant under Section 7B2 of the Small Business Act between January 31st, 2020 and April 3, 2020 was for a purpose other than paying payroll costs and other allowable uses loans under the Paycheck Protection Program room. I don't even understand that, so I didn't check it.
I need somebody to help me restate that question. I wasn't able to pick it all up.
I'm sorry. Can I do it again?
But you're going to have to read pretty slowly. And if you have your phone on speaker, you need to take it off so that we can hear it.
So,
okay?
Can we do this? Can you type your question into the queue and we will respond back to it from the queue so that we can get to the next person?
Yes, I will.
Yeah, so
I
you
will.
can get.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you
will.
very much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Jones, we have the next question ready to go.
Yes, the next person is Garnet Francis. I hope I pronounced that right.
Mr. Francis?
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, so quick question on, we're a school, a private elementary school, and in New York, and so once the governor, shut all the institution down, we had to shut down too. So we applied for the PPP, and we received it. 65% of our staff we furloughed, and now we have the loan, and no students in except for the, say, 36% who are the elementary who are doing remote learning, right? Now we try to communicate with the other staff, but there's no work. Why can't we use the PPP shift it to the time when school is open back up legally versus it has to be used in an 8-week format over an 8-week period?
Wow.
You get what I'm saying?
I think I do. Irene, do you want to go first?
Yeah, because what's happening now, we even reaching out to a couple of the preschool teacher, they already filled out for their unemployment, but there's no work too, so it would be bringing them back to do what? Nothing. So it's like a catch-22, and they want to stay on the unemployment due to the fact they're going to get more.
Well, let me play lead off like a Ricky Henderson, since you mentioned New York, and I'll let Irene drive me in because she probably has better comments and thoughts on this than I do. Well, first of all, let's go back to the guidelines. The strict reading of the guidelines are that you have to maintain and not have a drop off in employee numbers during the 8-week period at issue. So if I recall your question properly, when you applied, you had to indicate or make a representation about the number of employees. So the first question is going to be, are you able to say that you had no drop off? Did you maintain those levels? The complication, from what I understand, is that you've sort of recharacterized or transformed those employees. They're not necessarily coming into the school teaching 8 hours or whatever. They're doing remote learning. And so the actual activity, the nature of the activity has changed as a result of the pandemic. So I believe that that adds a certain level of complication into what is meant by maintain employee levels. However, then you threw in a third complication. You said they're getting unemployment insurance, which to me means that they're no longer engaged as an employee. So there's a lot to that question that would have to be unpacked like an onion, and we'd have to go through it very precisely to try to give you advice and guidance. But remember this, and this will be my final point, the loan interest rate is 1%. And I know that doesn't help you because it's much better to forgive 100% of a loan than to have to pay back the principal plus 1%. But that would be a fallback position. So I'm not sure exactly how to address all of those concerns you raised. They seem valid to me, and it would require more analysis from my perspective.
Yeah, I don't have anything else to add. I do have a question. When you applied for the loan, had those employees been furloughed yet?
Pardon me?
When you applied for the loan, had those employees been furloughed already?
No, they were. We were in the process because we didn't know if we were going to apply for it or not. So once we applied, if I remember correctly, once we applied, I think they were in the process. And even some of them, we reached out to them, and they still haven't gotten through.
Okay, so I don't have anything different than what Taya said. It likely will convert into a loan because you can only use it for, qualifying payroll related costs as well as, rent and utilities. And so if you don't, anything that you don't spend, and if you don't get that 75-25% ratio, it'll be converted into a 1% loan because your head count and your head, well, yeah, that is, yeah, because you're what you're saying too is that your total head count is going to be way less than 100%
Yes,
at
yes,
the
the head
end
count
of
is going to be a lot less.
Yeah, so yeah, yeah, I don't have anything different to add than what Taya said, because potentially the whole thing could be converted to a loan, right?
Pardon me?
Because potentially the whole thing would be considered a loan to the extent that you had to maintain the staff.
Yes, and so what the other question to that nut, yeah, I understand that 1% very clearly. But let's just say, you have these 66% of the staff that's off, and everyone trying to take advantage of whatever this is, and it's a loan. That balance of for what the rest is. So a lot. Well, the question would be, better part of the question would be,
excuse me,
since
sir.
it's a loan, can
Excuse me,
we
sir.
just use it for whatever we want to use it for within a payroll format?
Right, sir. So we are coming to the end of the call. We have 6 people, now 5 people in the queue, and we want to begin to wrap this up. So we're going to ask that the 5 people ask your questions only, and then our expert panel will provide a response after all 5 of you ask your questions. And please make it a question so that others can get the benefit of the response. So D. Jones, if you would ask Joyce Marley to come on in and let her ask her question, and then we'll go and complete these last 5 questions and then pivot to a closeout. All right.
Oh, she should be, so Marley, she should be ready. She
All right,
dropped
well,
off.
she
I don't
dropped
see it.
off.
So
So,
the next
okay.
person up is Gwen Porter.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, I have a 2-part, and I have not heard this addressed at all. We are a small church, and my question is, first of all, our payroll is done in-house, so our employee 1099s sufficient as documentation? And also, what can you do if your bank is no longer taking applications?
Okay, that's question 1. Jones, let's go to the next question.
All right, so the next question is coming from Mike Nelson.
Hi, good afternoon, Michael Nelson. Basically, I am a.
I think we can't hear him.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes. Try it now.
Sorry about that. Okay, my name is Michael Nelson. I have a insurance agency. My business is filed as an LLC. I have 1 employee that's been on payroll since 2019. 2-part question. Basically, due to the amount that's payroll, $1,300 is the average monthly amount. I pay myself as an independent contractor. Should I put both myself and the employee on the same form, or is there another form that should be filed myself?
Okay, thank you for your question. We're going to try to get you an answer. Jones, let's go to the next question.
Next question, Patricia Freeman.
Yes, good morning. I want to know, how small do you have to be in order to apply for this payroll protection? We have 2 employees, the pastor and administrative assistant, and we have a mortgage plus our utilities. And we do have W-2s.
Okay, we'll take your question. It's in queue. Jones, let's go to the next question.
Next question from Jarek Bernard.
Mr. Bernard?
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, my question.
Mr. Bernard? Okay, we may have to come back to him. He may have to type his question. Let's go to the next person and get the question.
Next person, Mike Nelson.
I think Mr. Nelson has
Just
already
asked that.
He already asked his
All
question.
right, so did we get Patricia Freeman?
Ms. Freeman, do you have a question this morning?
Yes, I did. I asked my question. It was about how small you're allowed to, you have to be to apply for it. I'm a church, a pastor, and administrative assistant. Did you get my question?
Yep.
It's in the queue.
Thank you so much. Okay, so we're going to try to take these questions. Panel, who would like to begin?
Ladies first, Irene. I made some notes.
All right. I think he said ladies first. So I'll start with, I think it was Patricia's question. So you just have to have 500 employees or less. There's no minimum employee. There's a maximum size requirement, which is 500 or less. And then I think I'll go back to the first question where the caller talked about support for payroll. They said they had 941 filings. Those should be sufficient. And then I think she said the bank was no longer taking apps, her bank. So you would need to go to another lender or organization participating in the PPP program. And then I think the last one, the one that maybe I didn't, I think the gentleman said he was an LLC. I think he was implying, I think he said he was the sole member. He had one employee plus himself, and only the one employee received W-2 wages, and he paid himself via a 1099. Here is where, say, I believe he would file as an independent contractor, right? And so use his Schedule C as a basis for what he is eligible for.
That's right. So I want to try to eliminate the confusion, and I'm speaking quickly because I know we're trying to wrap up. The difference between a W-2 and a 1099. Okay, so if you have a company and you have a W-2 employee that you're making distributions to, you should have a 941, and that would be uploaded to the bank for the bank's documentation. The 1099 is for a separate application as an independent contractor. So you don't aggregate them. You don't muddle the application by throwing in 1099s and W-2 employees, if that helps. On the church thing, I'll just piggyback off of what Irene said, but there are, remember I said at the beginning of this, a number of different avenues that the CARES Act addresses. Here's something of interest for those in the church industry. Was a 60% cap on contributions. That has been waived, so there is no cap on cash contributions to religious institutions. So to the extent that you have a wealthy or they have disposable income in your congregation, it might be important to note that they can make cash contributions to the church above and beyond what they were normally making for tax purposes. Hope I didn't forget anything.
No, I think you all covered the questions. I'm trying to look at my little notes to make sure we have not missed anyone. Thank you so very much today for your time and your effort, to the panelists, and thanks to all of you for joining us this morning. We know that your time is valuable. We want you to know that NAACP will be here to assist you through this most difficult time. Before we go, there is a poll that's available. We want you to take that poll. It allows us to track the progress of this work and also hold elected officials accountable while we're making policy changes. Last, before we go, I want to turn this back over to our wonderful president and CEO, Derek Johnson, for closing comments.
I want to thank our panelists who gave up their time and their knowledge and skills to provide this critical information to you all who represent the African American community from across the country. As I'm looking at this list here, I see small businesses that are located in Honolulu, in every state across the country. That's huge. I want to allow them to do a closeout statement. They are also small businesses as well. And so as they are giving up their free advice here, they are also providing services to many companies across the country. Mr. Titus is actually the largest CPA firm in the nation, African-American CPA firm in the nation. Teo, as you can see, is an expert on SBA based in Maryland. So as they provided free advice here, as you consider your professional support to be as you are a successful business, I would like for you to also consider them. I'm not doing this as a commercial because they're on the call. I'm doing this because they have volunteered this today. They volunteered yesterday. And so as we all navigate this new reality, let's all work to be supportive of each other. So Tay, I'm gonna allow you to close out with a few comments, and please, if people want to get in contact with you to engage you, please let them know.
I don't really want to say much. I really appreciate having Irene here to cover me as we went through the questions. So once again, you know, there is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. It's not as favorable as the Paycheck Protection Program, but it's out there. And there were funds for that. And there's non-traditional financing as well. Also, we didn't talk about some of the other issues like the unemployment insurance. I know it's a distasteful but necessary thing for some of us. Our employees being unemployed, you might want to give them that type of advice. So there was money for unemployment as well. And there's just a lot of stuff packed in to that CARES Act. And so if you are a business and you're thinking about sustaining yourself, reach out to people like Irene, who can assist you in working out some of the financial parameters of what it takes to take advantage of that law.
Yeah. And so, Irene?
I'll just say thank you. I know our time is short. It's our pleasure to be on the panel. Thank you, Taya, because this was great. I learned from you as well. And I just would advise all of the callers to be as prepared as you can when you're applying for this loan, so they don't have to call you back. Have your documents as organized as they can be when you apply the first time, so you don't have to come back and answer a second round of questions. So with that, I appreciate NAACP allowing us to participate in the panel. Thank you.
Yeah. So in acknowledging their expertise, let's be mindful as we navigate in this moment. We do have African Americans who serve in many capacities to provide the necessary information to be successful. Let's support each other so our community can be stronger. And if our community is stronger, we can continue to support each other. Have a wonderful morning and much success in navigating this new reality. Take care.
Thank you.